Welcome to Bloomberg Law on Demand. I'm Pacchia. The co-founder of the hedge fund Galleon Group, Raj Rajaratnam, was arrested in October 2009 in the largest U.S. insider trading investigation to date. As jurors deliberate on Rajaratnam's guilt or innocence, we'll assess what this case means for Wall Street. Joining me now to discuss, David Pitofsky. He's a partner at the law firm Goodwin Procter, based here in New York. David, thanks so much for coming in. Welcome to the program. So let's take stock of this. What does insider trading mean to today's society? How big a threat is it?
Well, you know, it's not as big as a threat of the kinds of major accounting fraud cases that we saw maybe a half a generation ago, where a lot of pension fund investments were lost, a lot of mom and pop investors lost their money. You know, the harm can be great to the people involved in the trades, but it's not as broad-based as some of those larger cases that we saw 10, 15 years ago. So
let's jump to the Rajaratnam case. We've gone through an extended trial period. We're now in deliberations. What do you make of the events as they've transpired?
Well, the presentation of evidence seemed to go fairly well for the government. They had a lot of different types of evidence, wiretaps, witnesses, documents, and nothing seemed to go particularly wrong. None of the witnesses seemed to be exposed on cross-examination. The defense didn't really seem to challenge the government's view of the facts, just challenge the government's view as to what conclusion the jury should draw from those facts.
Now, we've had news developing today on the jury. We're going to be adding an alternate juror. One of the jurors has left for a medical reason. How long do you expect deliberations to go?
Well, the judge instructed the jury to basically start afresh. And it'll remain to be seen what that actually means to this jury. If they were still fairly early in their own deliberations, then it might take a substantial amount of time. If they were close to a verdict and it's just a matter of sort of bringing in this new juror, bringing that person up to speed and making that person comfortable, it may not be that long. There's a lot of water under the bridge. They've talked about a lot of things. Right. They don't literally have to discuss every single thing again. Right. So it's not like we can say it's going to be another week and a half because it's been a week and a half thus far.
The Kozlowski case took something like 2 weeks in total. Not to compare these two cases, but you think as a rule of thumb, 2 weeks might be an appropriate amount of time?
It sounds about right.
Okay. Let's take a look at how this case has transpired. At first, people were talking about it as almost it was a slam dunk for the government, but commentators and pundits, at least, have seemed to have changed their tune. How do you account for that tonal shift, at least insofar as the media has approached this case? Is this just an example of great lawyering, or?
I think that part of it may just be that people expected, perhaps, that because the case was strong, the jury would reach a verdict almost immediately. But the fact of the matter is there were 14 counts, and these are fairly sophisticated white-collar crimes. And the jury's job is to really go through the evidence and make sure that it has reached a verdict on all 14. I'm not sure anything changed except for people just not expecting that it might take this jury a little while to think through these issues.
One of the things we like to do on this program is to make lawyers uncomfortable and ask them to speculate on outcomes. Where do you think that this case is ultimately going to end up?
Well, the evidence has seemed very strong. The wiretaps were strong, the witnesses were strong, the documents were strong. I have actually always suspected that the defense went to trial not necessarily because they thought they were going to win the trial, but because they needed to preserve their ability to appeal the decision not to suppress the wiretaps. If he had pled guilty, he would have forfeited the right to appeal that issue. And it remains an issue that he might have some traction on when he gets to the Second Circuit. So I still think a conviction is likely. I still think that an acquittal would be pretty shocking and quite a setback for the government. And then in between that, you have a hung jury, which is not a particularly great result for either side, although the defense would see that as a minor victory.
Right, certainly the government doesn't want to risk losing a case like this. In prepping for this interview, we talked to a lot of people who raised the idea that there's at least a perception that the government in this day and age is using insider trading cases as almost a cover, if you will, to avoid larger prosecutions against banks and those responsible for the financial and credit crisis that we saw 2 or 3 years ago. Any veracity to that assessment?
I doubt it. You know, the government, the prosecutors in New York have a lot of different responsibilities. They have responsibilities for bank fraud and insider trading and drugs and guns and money laundering. They have to do a lot of different things. They obviously have had success at finding insider trading cases that they felt they had enough evidence to prosecute. And the same just hasn't been true with some of the more industry-wide cases.
I mean, is it just a matter of going after the low-hanging fruit? I mean, when you look at the total damage done by Rajaratnam in this case, it's a matter of millions. so to speak.
Right.
When you look at some of the allegations that have been raised against banks and some of the other people who committed malfeasance leading up to the financial crisis, we're talking about damages in terms of billions. Why are we going after these cases in this day and age?
Well, they're going after the ones that they've investigated and they think they have enough to prove. And I presume they have not found enough to prove the larger cases, because I have every reason to believe that they would want to do those cases if they could make them. Those would be very high-profile cases that would bring a lot of favorable attention to those offices. And I think they just haven't found them. They haven't found the evidence to make those cases.
When we step back and take a look at this case, what does it mean in the big picture? Are we going to see more cases like this with big, I mean, it's the largest United States insider trading investigation to date. Do you expect that trend line to continue, or are we going to see more cases with bigger numbers brought?
You know, I don't know that there's much about this case itself that is unprecedented or different. It's a fairly straightforward insider trading case as far as the government's evidence seems to indicate. The big difference here was really the use of the wiretaps to investigate the case. And the government has said that it's going to change its practices and not reserve those kind of aggressive investigative techniques just for mob or blue-collar cases. And so I think we may be seeing in accounting fraud cases, insider trading cases, all sorts of white-collar cases, the use of wiretaps, which we had not seen before this case.
Right, so the government's using a better flashlight, so to speak.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see what they find in the dark. All right, well, we'll have to leave it there for now. David, thanks so much for coming in. Very interesting.
Thank you.
That's David Pitofsky. He's a partner at the law firm Goodwin Procter. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.